All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to, this should be just a fascinating discussion. This is a salute to the legacy of the Four Horsemen. I'm your moderator, ring announcer Midnight Guthrie. A lot of you know me as Cody as well. But the men I'm here with, it's a real thrill for me as I'm being joined by original members of the Four Horsemen. We have manager extraordinaire J.J. Dillon getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. And then Tully Blanchard to my right. And this is a real special treat. One of the, really the original foes of the Horsemen when they made their inception. Magnum TA, everybody. Magnum TA. So I guess to get started, because there's a lot of different origin stories. In your estimation, gentlemen, what is the impetus, what is the original origin of the Four Horsemen forming as a group? Officially.
Who are you asking?
JJ, you can start. Yeah.
Well, a lot of things that are successful in wrestling that are some person's creative idea. Sees something special between a group and puts them together. And in the case of the Four Horsemen, it was the exact opposite. It was a very spontaneous thing. And we were doing TBS TV. We were working 7 days a week. Matinees on Sunday, and Saturday we would do TV out of the TBS studio in the morning, get on a plane and go somewhere and wrestle that night. And it was a deal where it was the show that came on at 6:05, they would start taping it, and the tape would just run. It wasn't like it was done in segments and edited, and so it was kind of wing it, and if things ran short or long, adjustments were made. And it seems to me that 1 week, for whatever the reason, towards the end, that there was time that they were short, and Ric Flair was the world heavyweight champion. Ole Anderson and Arn Anderson were world tag team champions, and Tully, you were either the national champion or the TV champion?
TV champion.
All right, he was TV champion, and I managed just Tully through some shenanigans. Somehow Baby Doll got aced out, and I don't remember the details of how I pulled that off, but anyway, I only managed Tully. So as it was, somebody said, oh, you guys got all of the championship belts, all the gold, so all of you go out there at the same time and give you a chance to tell the fans, you know, what towns you're going to be in.
There was an 8-man tag match coming up.
Oh, okay, there was an 8-man tag match coming up. I knew there was some reason why they all of us went out there, and I went out because I managed Tully. And the idea was to promote the 8-man tag match as well as tell them where the towns we were going to be in the upcoming week. And Arn Anderson, in his own unique style, just on his own said, you people at home, take a look at your screen of all these guys that have all the bragging rights wearing all the gold. And he said, never have so few dominated everyone else. You'd have to go back in the history books to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and he held up 4 fingers. Well, nobody thought anything of it, except immediately following that, anytime any one of us went out there, it became an interactive thing because the fans could get involved, and they started yelling Four Horsemen, and then they started holding up the 4 fingers so that they were involved. And if I remember right, it was a couple of weeks that went by, and Jimmy Crockett finally said, what's this Four Horsemen thing I keep hearing? And I said, Jimmy, I think maybe you better pay attention, because it certainly wasn't our idea, but the fans heard it, liked it, picked up on it, and there's...
Well, very shortly, we were in Greensboro, and there was a whole, like the second row of ringside was a college fraternity, and they all came dressed in sport coats, ties, and sunglasses, and holding up a flashcard, Horsemen. And it was pretty phenomenal.
And one of them's here from Greensboro, who works with, can't think of his name's drawing a blank, but he still follows on, he writes for the Torch, contributes to the Torch, and he was one of that group in the front row. Yeah.
Are you talking about Bruce Mitchell?
Bruce Mitchell,
Yeah.
yes, thank you. You saved me. And
You should
again,
stay out of cages.
I know. Thank you, Tully. But again, it was an impromptu thing, and many of the successful things are something that the fans got involved in. And what made it so unique was the four guys that were the core of it were already established in the business. They were already stars in their own right. Certainly Flair is a world champion. Certainly Ole and Arn. By that time, Arn had rose quickly, and as an Anderson had proved his worth. And Tully was, I mean, he's here to honor his father. He's second generation. I first met Tully when he was a quarterback at West Texas State. I was wrestling in Amarillo, and just a great talent. So everybody was already established in the business. And what was unique about us is there were no egos. That a lot of times, especially when you have four, when
There were great egos,
Wow.
there just wasn't any jealousy.
Okay, yeah, that's better put. That a lot of times when there's interview time, and if there's 3 or 4 guys, and you go out there and they run short of time, and one guy doesn't get his time on the mic, and I've seen it time again, and come back, head drop, face down because he didn't get to talk on TV, where that was not our mentality. It was like we would often go out there with no order of who was going to say what. It just was whatever the feel of the moment was. And there were weeks where one or several of us didn't talk because somebody got on a roll, and we just had a chemistry between the four of us. We traveled together. We were in the dressing room together. Thanks to Mr. Flair, whether we wanted to or not, we partied together, and we spent more time together than we did with our families. And I don't think I certainly never would have dreamed that it would last as long as it did and become as big as it did. But it was, God, it was a great experience.
Oh yeah, it was, but because of the origin is why people still remember to that level the Four Horsemen, because it wasn't a promoter's idea. It wasn't somebody sitting around going, how can I sell tickets? And, oh, we're going to call these 4 guys the Four Horsemen. That was not the case. And, it was just phenomenal. And, I mean, the reality of me being part of the group, I don't remember, Terry, you might remember, as Flair was Gene and Ole's nephew. Was
I'm not sure cousins. I think they're cousins.
they were in the Anderson family somehow to help Flair get over, and then Arn came in as a nephew. Maybe he was the nephew, and so it was an Anderson family deal. And then in that 8-man tag match, my only claim to fame was I was wrestling the Booker. So he was going to be in the 8-man, so I got to be in the 8-man, and they couldn't get rid of me. Or JJ. So
Yeah, I became the manager of the whole group, which was kind of sweet for me. And it just, what was unique too, in the history of the business, I've been with a lot of people that were not fan favorites that I've managed, and they grow in intrigue and people get excited to see them, but then the first time they get beaten, they're never quite the same. They're never as hot as they were. And we had a certain amount of magic that we could go out week after week and, you know, leave the ring in our own blood, but somehow manage to bring the belts with us. And then as long as they give us the TV time the following week for us to create our own version of what took place the week before, the fans used to look at us and say, you know, knew that we were bold-faced. In their opinion, we were bold-faced liars, and thought, well, they need to get them back in the ring and give them a worse beating than what they took last week. And that's a nice situation because people wanted to continue to buy tickets to see us.
They just like watching us get beat up.
Yeah, and again, when we ambushed Dusty on video, some of the things that we did, we eventually ambushed Luger when we got rid of him, and we were maybe ahead of the curve in doing things on video that had impact. And I remember the one with Dusty where, you know, he was our arch nemesis, and all the others that, you know, whether it was the Road Warriors or Terry before his tragic accident, or Jimmy Valiant, and you could go right down the list, and Jimmy Garvin. And so our logic was, instead of picking off Sam Houston and picking off these other guys that were, you know, the followers of Dusty and part of his team, instead of picking them off one by one, we're going for the big dog. And if we get the big dog and make an example of him, then what are the other guys going to think if we do damage to him? So that was the whole concept of us setting up, waiting in ambush for Dusty to come to the office in his red Mercedes, and we followed him in and boxed him off so that he couldn't escape, and then we hog-tied him to the truck and smashed his hand. And there were people who thought that we should have been arrested for assault and criminal charges brought against us. I mean, it unbelievable impact with what was a one-camera shoot. Again, because the business has changed. Now they show a lot of things behind stage on video. We established right from the very first moment that why there was a camera shooting it. Because we said we hired the cameraman. We were doing this by design, wanted it captured, even told the guy, make sure you may not like whatever you're going to see, but tape it, and we're paying you big money. So that kind of explained why they taped it all. And then the next step was Tony Schiavone and David Crockett were appalled, you know, that oh my God, you know, and then you know, then if they were that appalled, why would they want to then show it on television? Covered that angle by me saying, well, you know, with a little smirk, you know, well, the reason that you're showing it is because we bought the time. You got to show it. And the end result was that all of the friends of Dusty Rhodes, when they see what we did to him, they got to go to bed at night thinking, boy, if they ever got me alone, what would they do to me? And we got mileage for a year out of that.
Well, and that viciousness of the Horsemen, it was such a huge factor, I think, as far as drawing the big crowds and people getting invested, because it wasn't just top heels coming out cutting great promos to get people in. It was, you guys are classy, but then you got this vicious side to you that knew no bounds, because you'd go after Dusty, you'd go after Magnum, you'd go after Sam Houston, you'd rub Ricky Morton's face into the floor of the studio. It didn't matter, you were taking somebody out. Now, right around the time period here of the development of the Horsemen, Tully, you and Magnum had what is still widely considered one of the great feuds of the history of the NWA in the Mid-Atlantic area, that culminated in that I Quit cage match, which is still widely considered by many one of the great cage matches of all time. And for our younger fans, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch it, I think it's on the WWE Network now. It's pretty brutal. Just a phenomenal ending to that match. I mean, for you guys, would you consider that a highlight of your careers, or what are your thoughts regarding that very memorable cage match?
Well, at that time, you know, it was the culmination, and it didn't have to be the culmination, but it was. But it was from when did we do the thing? And Baby Doll came back from the 30 days and handed me the roll of quarters. Was that in May or April or something?
Yeah, I think so. That was in Charlotte, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was a Sunday afternoon, and that whole thing started when I hit him with the roll of quarters that Baby Doll gave me, and then they magically disappeared out of the ring. And there were
Coin collectors everywhere.
Yeah. You could hear a pin drop in that arena. 12,900 and something people. And I mean, it was an eerie feeling because the up and coming heir apparent babyface got beat. And I mean, it was dastardly in design, and it was in design because Baby Doll had been, I lost to Dusty, and she was gone for 30 days, and she came back dressed up like a policeman, and that's a lot like the thing with Dusty. There was a plan and a purpose. I mean, there just wasn't stuff just done to be done. And when she came in and that thing was over with, it was unbelievable. And that whole next 5 months, 6 months up to Starrcade was I mean, we went from boil to, I don't know what's even hotter than boil, but I mean, the matches every night all over this country. I mean, I made a comment to somebody one time. I said, if you haven't been belly to belly on the stage in Philadelphia, you haven't really lived in this business yet. And I've been belly to belly on cement every stinking night somewhere, and all over the buildings and out in the parking lots, and that level of intensity is what made the I Quit match itself so good, was because they wanted him to beat me up so bad, and he generated that intensity in his interviews and all the fights and all the battles that we did for that 5 months, that it just came to a head, and that was the perfect match to have. And it's probably the greatest match that I had in my career, and I had a lot of good ones with a lot of great people that I would have logged down. But I mean, the most memorable, I'm kind of at 62 years old, I look at things now, oh, it's a good steak. Is it a memorable steak? Well, no, it's not. Things in my life that are memorable, and that was a memorable moment. The start of it with the quarters, and then the culmination of it in the Greensboro Coliseum. And all that to say, we didn't do pay-per-views at that time. Think about simulcast. Greensboro Coliseum sold out 18,000, I think, and the Omni in Atlanta sold out 18,000, 36,000 people on Thanksgiving night. One live match, videoed match, or simulcast, back and forth. And that was just an unbelievable night for my career, his career, and for the company. I mean, it just couldn't get any better. And then to be able to have a match at that caliber that people still talk about 20, 31 years later. Did I add that right? Anyway, you talk about it. You beat me up.
Well, I was getting you in shape for everything that was yet to come in your career, is what it was. I mean, I knew you were tough, and I knew the intensity that I'd implemented into what I did, and Tully was the antithesis of everything I was as a babyface, he was as a heel. When I met Tully, his only desire was that he wanted to be the best heel in the business. He wasn't one of those heels that secretly wanted to be the superstar babyface main event. He wanted to be the best heel. I wanted to be the best babyface. And so when you put the two of that together with that kind of intensity and youthful enthusiasm and coming from the Bill Watts psychology of working stiff, which I think I probably redefined that word in the dictionary for Tully a few times. He speaks well today, but I think his throat was like in terminal pain for a matter of years after the fact, because we wanted to be that one match, no matter what you saw every night when you walked in and paid your money to watch a wrestling match. We wanted to be that one thing that you walked out talking about when you were going home, and say, those two guys are going to kill each other. And literally, we took it to a level. Every night, it didn't matter where it was. We could be 3 rows deep in ringside, fighting on the floor, or as you said, up on the stage. Or I mean, we would have done it anywhere. We even had jokingly kicked around about getting into it in Virginia Beach at the nightclub there that we went to. We knew we would both end up in jail, but we thought it would be it'd be good PR. So thankfully that never happened, so I didn't have to get a mugshot. But at the time we did it, it was such a joy to, like you said, go to work every day and enjoyed what we did in the ring every day. I had no idea it was going to be something that would be talked about 30 years later, or a landmark, brutal match or whatever, because everything we did was brutal. I just set the bar there, and I figured that's what everybody did. But it was an honor. It was. There is second to none to Tully Blanchard in the world of the heels. I'm going to tell you right now, I work with the greats, and it's extremely talented people, but I had to turn it down 5 notches for anybody else to go out there after I'd worked with Tully. So it was an honor, it was a pleasure, and it is great to share these memories with all you people out here.
Now, one thing I've always wondered, the ending of that match, very, very memorable. With the wooden chair, the piece splinters off, you jam it into his eye. Was that just a perfect coincidence that it worked out? Had you seen the chair ahead of time in the arena and thought, we've got to use this tonight? How did that work out?
Well, the chair was a plan, but nobody knew that just absolutely perfect prop would turn into the most horrifying looking steak.
Yeah.
Known to man. I mean, it was. Is he going to drive this through his skull, and we're truly going to see the end of this, or what's going to happen? And we knew we were going to have the moment. We just didn't know we were going to have that particularly gruesome piece of hardware to work with.
No, I mean, when I broke the chair in the ring, I mean, you just pick a piece, and that looked like the best piece. So,
yeah, what do I want him to stick me in the eye with?
I'd like to say one thing about the Horsemen too, and Arn has brought this point up, that when we were in a town, the guys weren't all in one match every night. Sometimes it was broken down. Maybe Flair would defend the title, there's a tag match, maybe somebody was in a single. And what I recognized and what Arn Anderson confirmed was that there was a subtle sense of challenging each other. In other words, the first guy that went out there, and if it was Arn, he went out there and gave 110%. And when he came back to the dressing room, it wasn't like he'd come in and make some smart comment. He didn't have to say anything, but he would come back with that look about him, okay, guy, follow that one. And so that became our standard. that anytime any of us went out, you knew that you were going to get the absolute best match no matter where we were positioned on the card. And I think over a period of time, though the fans may have hated us as a stable in the beginning, they finally learned to love to hate us because we earned their respect by going out and giving it to them every night. And one of the things I say about Flair, and I've seen this in all the years and as I've moved around different parts of the world, you know, there's always a town that you have anticipation is going to be really good, and you get there, and whether the TV got preempted that week or whatever the reason, the crowd is not anywhere near what you were anticipating. And I've seen a lot of guys in this business who had the attitude, oh, well, this week can kind of take it easy tonight, this is a night off. And not only with Flair, but with each guy here, their mindset was that the people who did buy a ticket that night and were there because they saw the Horsemen were on the marquee came with that anticipation. And so we always felt we had an obligation to them, whether there were 500 people there or 5,000 or 25,000, to go out and give them what they anticipated. And I think they further respected us because they knew that they got the same effort. It had nothing to do with the size of the house. And the other point I want to make is that the Horsemen did not draw just by our name only because we walked out there. There had to be somebody on the other side of the ring. And rest his soul, Dusty Rhodes was the catalyst for most of that time. He was the leader, but he was surrounded at that time by an incredible array of talent that we were fortunate enough to work with. And I count Magnum TA among them, and the Road Warriors, and Ronnie Garvin, and Sam Houston, and you know, all the guys that we got to work with. We had the best across the ring that every night forced us to be the best that we could be. And so I think that was a contributing factor in our run. And when Terry had his accident, I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, it was in the paper, and it was about a mile from his home in a pouring rain, and hit a slick spot in the road, lost control of his car, hit a tree, and in an instant, his neck was broken and his career was ended. And if there is one person, and not just because he's sitting here, but if there's one person who had an unlimited future as to where he was going to go, it's Terry Allen. He was destined for many of the things he's talked about, the dues that he paid, the style he developed, what he delivered when he was in the ring. Oh, he would have been a world champion. And I don't know if Tully remembers this, but you know, you were in a battle for your life when that happened. It wasn't just your career that ended. And it was, well, is Terry even going to survive? And the doctor said because he was a magnificent athlete in such tremendous shape, that contributed to the fact that he did survive. And one night, Doug Dillinger, who was in charge of security, and it was well after midnight, snuck us into the back door of the hospital, into an intensive care, which you couldn't get there, but we were able to get there. And we walked in, and there was Terry laying there face down on an apparatus with this thing that totally immobilized his head, and he, I'm sure, had no idea that we were there, and he was on a machine that rotated one way and the other so that his body fluids didn't settle. And you heard the phrase, you could hear a pin drop, well, you could have heard a pin drop. Nothing was said or needed to be said, because as we looked at him, praying that he recovered, it could have been one of us.
Yeah, that was a tragic, I mean, all our lives changed. I woke up the next morning and the news. I mean, here's a guy that we just finished a 8-month program, and business is booming and everything is looking great, and one of our key players was gone just like that. It was crazy. And we didn't spend a lot of time thinking, as JJ said, but I mean, we all drove fast and we all had cars that could go fast, and it could have been any of us. And it was a day and a time and an era that you never forget. It marks your life.
And I don't know if you people know it, but Terry, he fought back and eventually was able to walk independently, which he can do short distances now. And he told me the other day that when they invented this device that's sitting over there, it changed the quality of his life because it allowed him to have mobility. He's married. He and I have something in common, that we're both fathers of twins, and he gets around on that device. And you people may not know it, but it's heavy, it's cumbersome, and unfortunately he can't fly with it on an airplane. And when Kyle Klingman invited him to come here, knowing that you people would be delighted to see him, that it involved Terry, and he brought his family with him to get in a car and drive from his home all the way across the country, and it took a week to come to Waterloo to be here to see you people.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And the thing of it is we got to entertain you guys and put on some unbelievable battles of good and evil and all these things that we did that was made so many memories. But it's so ironic that Tully and I, and for me, being reminded so many times about the I Quit match, and no, he never said the word, so I will just get that out right now.
But I named the book that way.
There you go, and it will still pay off. So, but the thing of it is so I inadvertently ended up in the I Quit match of life. Okay, so this guy who's been watched by hundreds of thousands of people on TV gets to play this hero and gets to do all these superhuman things. Got faced with a challenge, and whether I was going to buckle and crawl into my pity pot and become a statistic or not was certainly something that could have happened. Could have happened really easily. But I made a mistake that day that I've never admitted, and I've got to admit to everybody here. Well, I never prayed to God to take this away from me. I prayed for Him to give me the strength to do what I knew was going to be ahead of me, and He's been faithful. He's done that. But boy, have I paid for it. I'm here, and the battle goes on. It goes on every day like it does for each and every one of you and your challenges in life. I'm here to tell you, there is no quit in life. Life is a challenge, no matter what it is, your job, your family, your health, whatever it is a challenge. And my quest was that if I could persevere, whether I had a platform, whether I was on TV, or no matter what I was, wherever we're at, we're an example. If it's at work, if it's with our friends, with our family, you're an example. You're teaching somebody how to react to the challenges in their own life. And if I could do anything and give back to all the people that supported me as I entertained them, and literally the hundreds of thousands of letters I got while I was in the hospital, I wanted them to see that, that thing we lived by wasn't just something that sounded good. Tully got to where he got to be by hard work. Nobody gave it to him. Nobody gave it to me. I didn't come from somebody that I knew in the business that got me in, and I got down the road. We all worked super, unbelievably hard to do something we loved, but to be the best at it. And no matter what you do in life, it's the same thing. If you give 100%, at the end of the day, that's all you can do, is give 100% and never, ever quit. And I'm not a quitter. Nobody sitting up here with me is a quitter. None of you guys are quitters. And I want that message to be out there. You know, through God, all things are possible, 100%. But you've got to move. You can't stay parked. You can't just say, "Oh, poor pitiful me." You got to get up and go for it each and every day. Bad knees, bad backs, bad pains. Oh, poor pitiful me. Go. Get up and move. Do what you can do. And maybe it's not go climb a mountain, and maybe it's not to be able to go run a 4-minute mile or go pin somebody in 30 seconds. But your accomplishments every day are just as important as all these things we're sitting up here talking about today. The things we did that were so memorable, and I'm glad we made those memories for you. Well, you're making memories today for yourself, for your families. So keep it up. That's all.
Let's talk a little bit about the membership of the Horsemen. You started out, you had Ole, Arn, Rick, Tully, JJ, and then eventually Lex Luger was briefly in the fold, Barry Windham was briefly in the fold, and finally, not briefly, very finally remembered, Great Horseman.
He was there the longest.
My question is, as far as membership goes, I know you guys are all friends. Did you have input into who actually formally joined the group? Was it a booking decision put on you?
Well, Ole got fired.
Surprise.
And so they had found this specimen down in Florida that they wanted to get him over in a hurry. And so that was a booking decision. And Lex was with us for a while.
Let's tell the truth. Barbara Goodish is here. Barbara Goodish is the widow of Bruiser Brody. And Lex Luger was green and inexperienced. I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened, but there was a cage match in Florida between Bruiser Brody and Lex Luger, who had an incredible body. And I don't know what Lex did, but apparently Bruce took exception to it and gave him the beating of his life, to the point that I understand that Lex climbed out of the cage, went to the dressing room, packed his bag, and was gone. And the story was that here's this guy with a great body, and the Florida office called Jimmy Crockett and said, he's got to go somewhere. Can you guys do something with him? And that's where, with Ole gone, and we were able to take a guy who had a great body and able to camouflage his lack of experience because of the ability of the other guys. And that's the true story.
I didn't even know that part of the story.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it just, you can only go so far, and it just wasn't working. And then Arn and I were wrestling no, we got rid of, how did we do that? How were we wrestling Barry and Luger?
Barry switched in a match.
Yeah, but that was a match that was huge.
Everybody saw that one coming.
But we got rid of Luger. I forget what the angle was.
Barry turned on Lex.
Yeah, that part, but I mean, how did we get Lex over there with them to wrestle us on
I
television?
think it was a Crockett Cup tournament match, maybe?
Battle Royal.
Oh, Battle Royal. Thank you, Dan. Okay.
1987.
No, that's what it was. There was a battle, there was a bunkhouse stampede. And the deal was whoever won the bunkhouse stampede would get a title shot. at Flair. So our logic was that we were all in there, and I even got in there only with a thought in mind of just directing traffic. And if one of us won the bunkhouse stampede, then there would be no challenge to Flair, and that would solve the problem. And it ended up, because I recently had the chance to watch the match, it ended up with Tully, with Arn, with Luger, and I was still there. And all of a sudden, as I look around, it's all the Horsemen. And I remember I said, guys, I in my wildest dreams never thought that my name would be in the record book as having won a bunkhouse stampede. Tully looked at Arn looked at Tully, and they said, done deal. Tully went over the rope and eliminated himself. Arn went over the rope, eliminated himself, and Luger just kind of looked around. And there was a kind of a lull. And then I think Arn was the one that took the initiative and said, hey. And Luger looked at Arn and said, are you asking me or are you telling me? And he said, it doesn't matter, you're gone, get out. JJ's the winner. Well, I kind of lost track of what was going on, and all of a sudden, Luger grabs me by the backside and the hair and whoosh, dumped me over the top rope because he wanted that shot at Flair, so it exposed to us that he had an agenda of his own that was not in the best interest of the Horsemen. So that was the reason why we internally made the decision that Lex Luger was history. Remember that?
No. That's how memorable that part was. Oh, so then him and Barry team up and wrestle me and Arn on one of the live TV shows.
Jacksonville.
From Jacksonville, Florida, exactly. And then we did the angle, and that just blew the babyface's world aside. And that was a tremendously strong group of the Four Horsemen. I got asked this question last night, why they didn't induct Ole into the Hall of Fame. I said, that's a Vince question. You whatever. And, but when you look at the group that the WWE inducted, Barry, Rick, Arn, myself, JJ, our manager, that was the strongest performance group that there was. And it dynamically changed my role, because I went from the other single when it was Ole and Arn being the tag team. I went to the tag team, and Barry went to the other single. And it gave us so much more flexibility. And Arn and I could wrestle the Rock and Roll Express or the Road Warriors. And it worked. And Barry could wrestle anybody. Flair could wrestle anybody. And it worked. And that, in my opinion, is why that group is justified in going into the WWE Hall of Fame. Because of, and I mean, it was 2-3 years at that time. And the reason that it died is promoter issues. Pure and simple. I mean, you can't give a whole bunch of money away and not take care of the people that sell seats. And when some of us had had enough, I could only get thrown off the jet once.
I'm I'm going to relive a moment with you.
Go ahead.
We had an incredible run, and like I say, Tully and Arn both had enough, and so they had an opportunity to go to New York, where it was everybody wanted to go, to be managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan, the greatest manager there ever was. It sets the bar by which all of us are measured, and the final night was in Philadelphia, sold out house, and Tully and Arn were with the Midnight Express and dropped the titles to the Midnight Express. And as we walked back to the dressing room area, which was a pretty lengthy walk, I remember as if it was yesterday, Tully looked at me and he said, "JJ, it's over." And it was. The instant that Tully and Arn were leaving, and that was their last match, the success of the Horsemen, the whatever you want to call it, ended that moment. Now the name continued on, which is typical in wrestling. The promoters will take a name that had success and run it into the ground and bring other people and whatever, but truth be known, the moment that Tully and Arn left, that the Horsemen were over. And they went to New York and did extremely well. And it was right at the time where Crockett Promotions was being bought by Turner. And Tully called me not too long after that and said, "Hey, I don't know what your situation is with all that's going on there, but you know, Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson were booking 3 tours a night with all of the TV and needed help, and some people said some good things about me, and he said, if you're interested, make the phone call." And this was like November, and in February I was walked off camera because that was the ground rules with Vince. He wasn't hiring me to be an on-camera personality. It was for whatever creative skills I had and my attention to detail, and I went up there. But that was when the night of the Horsemen ended, and I do remember Tully, you looking at me in the face on the way back from the ring, and you said, "JJ,
when we stepped through the ropes,
it's over."
I said, "This is an end of an era."
Yeah, yeah.
And it was sad because it didn't have to be that way. But you know, people take care of their business the way they want to take care of it, and all we could do was go do what we did, and it was a lot of inside stuff at that point. Will be in my book that comes out this fall. So, and truly, I did. I just changed the name of the book to "I Quit."
Well, mine's coming out next year, so I'm glad you let me know that. So we don't have a mixed message.
Oh gosh, but you know, to just sit up here and talk about the memories, and I mean the things, and I mean that thing with Luger. I mean, I didn't even know that. Golly, we all learned something new today.
And the thing is, we had a genuine friendship that doesn't happen a lot of times in this business. When it's when 1 or 2 guys, it's one thing, but when 4 guys have to be together and around each other so much, and we all had our individual personalities, and yet there was a camaraderie with us. And when we had a day off at home, it was not uncommon for all of us to go to somebody's house for a barbecue or something. We just genuinely enjoyed each other's time. It was a chemistry that doesn't come along very often in life, and it was certainly the high point of my career to be able to be a part of it with these guys. And what was amazing was years later, Flair and Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania, and it was going to be, as I remember right, if Flair lost, his career was over. And so on that Monday, I got a phone call like Wednesday Howard Finkel, who hadn't called me in years and years and years. And he said, well, let's just talk now. But he said, we want to do a tribute to Flair Monday at Live Raw in Orlando, which was always a hot town for us. And he said, would you agree to come here and appear as a surprise? And I guess Tully got a similar call. And we all said, certainly, you know, to be able to walk out there and it wasn't a surprise to Rick because we were there earlier in the day and he knew he was there. But in terms of the moment and Triple H, they didn't tell us anything. All day we hung around there, and about 20 after 10, when it went off the air at 11, John Laurinaitis just briefly told us not much. And at 20 to like 11 it started, and I remember he had Rick in the ring and we were the first ones, and when we walked through the curtain in Orlando after all of those years, I know for myself, I was blown away by the fact that they remembered us and responded in the way that they did.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like no time had passed. It was amazing.
All right, we have about 10 minutes left, and actually, if it's okay, can we take some questions?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, you've got your hand up over there.
All right. Gentlemen, how are you?
Great.
All right. Now, Magnum, I definitely got to ask you, when the Horsemen were formed in 1985 and the end of September, when the fans were climbing the cage, take me through that one. And Tully, for you and JJ, 1990, you were in the locker room at Texas Shootout. What happened?
What's
The contract.
Magnum? You want to answer first?
What cage were they climbing over? Tell me.
The cage to help Dusty when the Horsemen were getting formed.
Are you talking about when he was in Atlanta and
Right,
I was in
Atlanta.
Greensboro?
Right? No, a little bit 2 months before.
Or is that when they jumped me in the dressing room and then they were beating him up outside and I got jumped on the Ole and Arn jumped me in the dressing room and beat me up in the back and
No,
then they went on there?
this was the start of it when Flair was facing Nikita, and then they did the turn. Flair did the turn, and then all the people were trying to save Dusty. It was
Wow.
real fans.
Yeah, it must have been because I don't remember it at all.
2 for 2.
I forget. Yeah, I wish I could help you with that one, but I mean, I have seen people want to climb the cage, but I don't remember that particular incident. I'm sorry.
You must have been knocked out. You've been attacked earlier.
One of the painful moments for me was we worked into a situation where Dusty had to put up a lot of money for a match to take place, and they had a grocery sack filled with money all wrapped up, and Dusty, this was post-accident, and Terry couldn't get around very, very well, but he was there, and he was going to be the guardian of this sack, I mean, jammed full of money. When things got bad for us and Dusty was looking good, I don't know what I did. I think I gently I shoved him, and down he went. I scooped up that sack of money and ran for the exit. Ran for my life, because I thought if anybody ever catches, they will kill me. They had a car sitting outside with the engine running. I jumped in and I breathed a huge sigh of relief, but I felt so bad of taking advantage of him in his condition and stealing that money, which ended up, it was, a box office winner, but I love this man, and to shove him down and to take advantage of him in that situation and steal that bag of money, I apologize to the world, and I apologize to you too.
I kind of figured like I had so many receipts coming to me, it really didn't matter at that point in time.
As I looked around, you were coming up the aisle after me, and that made me feel even worse.
Well, I forgive you.
Thank you.
Another question?
I got a question. You guys were white hot heels. Was there ever behind the scenes any talk of turning you guys face at all?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay.
They loved to hate us after a while, so we were, I don't know what we were.
Right there in the Trevor there.
Yep, thanks. JJ, I had mentioned this to you out in Vegas first time I met you at CHC. And this is directed towards you, Tully. The whole Horseman thing was very inspirational to myself in regards to wanting to have that lifestyle that you guys portrayed every Saturday on TBS. My first love was baseball, injury, wound up going to wrestling. And for 26 years, because of JJ, you, Arn, Rick, and Barry, I've been able to live a dream. So thank you, number one. Number two, can you elaborate and talk about Chicago, because that's where I'm from, and you guys did a ton of shows at the UIC Pavilion. Most specifically, when your driver unexpectedly passed away a day after you guys had him out.
We used to go to the Snuggery.
The Snuggery, or down on Rush. Do you remember that incident when you guys had the driver with you for 24 hours? Rick talked about it.
Yes,
Where-
every time he would come and pick us up, he'd say, Mr. Flair, please don't keep me out all night. and we would make promises to him that we wouldn't be there very long. And unfortunately, we never kept any of our promises. That poor man, he would sit in his car and he would fall asleep, and it would, Flair would tell me, so we'll see you at the Snuggery on Rush Street. And we would get there, and they would be lined up. I never thought I could ever say we would live like rock stars, but at that point, I think we kind of were, and we
were on Rush Street.
Yeah, we'd go in there and we would drink to our limit and then be on. And at the end of the night, where's our bill? There is no bill. It doesn't exist. And
Specifically, as far as, okay, let's say you guys were in Atlanta on Friday night, and you guys are coming to Chicago on Saturday. Don't know if you guys had a booking on Sunday. Talk us.
Yes, we had a booking on Sunday too.
Okay, talk us through a typical Saturday, because I know you guys would go to the Drake with Bruce McArthur. He would pick you guys up, correct, or send a car?
He usually picked us up. Him and Flair went to school together.
Correct.
And we'd stay at the Bismarck. And they'd give us the top floor of the Bismarck. But wherever we wrestled on Friday, we flew to Atlanta that night, because 10 o'clock in the morning you were on TBS Studios, and you taped the 6:05 TV show Eastern Time, and that was 2 hours, and then we taped the Sunday show right after that. Then immediately went to eat on the way back to the airport to jump on the plane to wrestle someplace on Saturday night. And they were always big shows. And then on Sunday, we always had a 2 o'clock and an 8 o'clock. And it was every week that way. And then the week would slow down, because Monday you'd have a town somewhere, and then Tuesday we had the syndicated TV shows to do.
Greenville Monday.
And then Tuesday we had at 8 in the morning, we started interviews to put in the syndicated shows, where they would go out, and this week, next week, in 3 weeks, or whatever the case might be. Those were all put in the TV shows, and we did interviews from 8 to about 3, whenever you could jump in the car and go to the airport to make wherever you were wrestling on Wednesday night. And then you had only 2 single shots on Thursday, Friday. It was almost like being off. And So you just go and work out and kind of be sane, and then it would start over again. And we normally had 1 or 2 days a month off, maybe.
These guys used to train every day. They trained hard, they really did. And they did sun tan, which neither of those I did. The only thing that I don't remember in all those times, all those days, was I don't ever remember us ever sleeping.
On the plane.
Okay.
But it was, Chicago was a fun place. And the Snuggery was it, and Bismarck, and the full limo driver did have to stay up a long time.
All right, well, it's 1:30. I've been given, well, we'll give Bruce a chance here, and then we got to cut it off.
I promise I'll be quick.
Okay.
I'm one of the people that had the privilege of watching you guys month to month on the front row of the Greensboro Coliseum, including the People's Money match. And I'm still friends with the folks that we had a regular group, we went all the time. Magnum, you know my friend John Hitchcock. And we had a barrel of fun. You guys were more fun than a barrel of monkeys. I mean, it was, and the high level of performance. We would sit there, and we talk, and my friends and I talk about this to this day. We would go, I can't believe it was that good and it was that much better than the last time. And there was sometimes at intermission we go, well, we've got Arn and Tully and Rick coming next, and Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express, and we had so much fun. I thank you so much. Just a great
That's
time.
Bruce Mitchell that you were referring
Thank
to
you.
earlier in the suits with his friends.
Let me not only thank Bruce Mitchell, but thank the fans for all of those years in all of the towns and everywhere that I went, because you supported the Four Horsemen, you supported professional wrestling. If it hadn't been for you wonderful fans, we wouldn't be sitting here.
All right, well, we could continue time, but we gotta conclude there. We're gonna turn this room around for the autograph signing. So, thank you all for joining us. It's been a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And ladies.
Yeah, thank you.